What's going on, guys? Jacob Skepis here, and we are with Brad Loomis from 3DMJ, and Brad just presented on dynamic training for bodybuilding, more specifically during a contest prep. I'm going to ask him a few questions about his presentation today. So the first question I had for you today, Brad, was training during a contest prep is obviously not going to be completely different to training in the off season or elsewhere or for other goals, but we need to know that the demands of bodybuilding contest prep place a certain number of stresses on us that influence how we approach training in contest prep. So why is knowing your athlete very important for programming in contest prep?
Basically it all comes down to that answer to almost all questions. It depends. It depends. I mean, there's a multitude of questions that are asked, and always, the answer is it depends. And really, that's why we want to know our athlete, because it depends. One athlete, exactly. One athlete, maybe they're brand new to the gym, and they've never done any training before. That person's not going to be very sensitive to weight training. They don't even have to have a progression plan. They're going to progress just by going to the gym, right? Whereas you take that to the opposite extreme, somebody that's been training for 20, 30, 40 years, and doing incredible loads of squats, 500-600 pounds, benching 400 or 500 pounds. That's nothing for an athlete that's been training that long. In fact, that's going to be their training loads. They're not going to be able to just go to the gym and do whatever. In fact, they're not even going to be able to go to the gym and have a really aggressive linear progression of increasing loads and increasing repetitions really on the weekly, much less the daily. So that's why you need to know your athlete, so that you can customize your training to that. It depends, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the kind of the technical portion, much less talking about the more personal side of it. Knowing, well, a person cannot, they don't have the mental fortitude to train 12 or 15 repetitions. It doesn't mean that it has to be that way. You don't have to do 12 or 15 repetitions. If that person doesn't have the mental fortitude to do that, give them something that's less taxing, on their mentality. They're still going to be able to succeed. Yeah,
definitely. Knowing your athlete, it allows you to skin the cat in many different ways, doesn't it?
And then customize it too.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And okay, the phone locked. So that allows us to determine how we approach programming for each client, because we can customize the plan, but the tools we use are very much going to be the same to each plan. So what are those tools, and when do we use which tool in what scenario?
Okay, well, the tools, they're not mutually exclusive as far as the absolute definition of one or the other, but like you mentioned, the tools are going to be applicable to all the athletes. It's just a matter of how you use those tools. So I like to refer to them as the big three: the volume, the intensity, the frequency, your basic components of weight training. Volume is usually termed at load times total repetitions, or a tonnage. Intensity, that's usually the load in comparison to the rep target. Obviously you're going to use a load that's heavier for 5 repetitions than you are for a 12 repetition target, because you can't use that heavy load and get 12 repetitions, right? So that's kind of your intensity portion. And then your frequency is how often that exercise or that body part is trained in any particular time frame. Usually it's a week, but your body doesn't know that 7 days is a week, so that's why we term it kind of microcycles. So you've got your big tools that you kind of apply to your training, and then you kind of utilize those tools to different capacities over the course of weeks, months, and even years of training.
And that's periodization.
Periodization, exactly. And that's that's basically what we have, at least at this point in time, revealed and through science, that is the most effective way to maximize your muscular gains as a natural athlete.
Definitely. And how does the application of those tools change in a contest prep, because we are in a semi-starved state? Obviously we can't perform how we would normally perform when we're fed. So how does the application of those tools differ? Because they're still going to apply, but how you're going to manipulate those tools is going to be, very different. And you almost have to think big picture. If you think, okay, if this is the career, from left to right, the career
of a bodybuilder, and we want volume to go up over time, and it's 10, 20 years, does this little competition prep where it kind of comes down just a little bit really matter in the context of 10 or 20 years? That few months is not even going to be recognizable in the trend line. So that's during the period of time when we got to say, okay, we're going to have to allow volume to come down a little bit. Now, obviously, we're going to try to limit that and make that decrease as little as possible for muscle retention, and we got to train smart and not train hard, right? But that's the kind of thing that where it's going to differ is you're going to have to kind of allow yourself to train at lower volume, whether that be lower intensities, lower rep ranges, what have you. Maybe start with an overall drop in volume, plan to progress to where maybe you're actually meeting levels that you were at the beginning. And then that will kind of allow you to kind of digress a little bit. Because when we do digress, it's not a matter of, we're losing muscle, because that's inherent in bodybuilding. A natural bodybuilding athlete is going to lose muscle. But what does matter is if you lose 10 pounds of muscle versus losing a pound.
Correct. Definitely. And you mentioned training smarter, not necessarily training harder. And this is where tapering and deloads can come into planning and having a strategic contest prep in a training sense. So why are deloads and tapers just as important for contest prep athletes as they are for performance and strength athletes?
Yeah, and this is where I wish I could have talked more. I probably focused a little bit too much on trying to get through it to the Q&A portion, but it's hard for a physique athlete to feel the effects of how strong and rejuvenated you are after a deload, and it's kind of one of those things where I always tell people is that if you could be in a place where you could train without any fatigue at all, you know what I mean? That's what it feels like when you come out of a deload. So imagine starting each and every block in your bodybuilding preparation feeling fresh and feeling strong and feeling ready to go. And so that's kind of how we utilize that progression during a bodybuilding prep. But we can also, like we were talking about, strategically plan for periods of time when the dieting has to be the most strenuous. If we're going to have to diet really extreme at some point, and you're going to be fragile, that's going to be a given. But maybe we can plan for that during a deload. We can plan for that drop in calories when we are starving. Maybe we miss high days, etc. During a deload when the training stresses are at a minimum.
Definitely. And this is where I guess autoregulation becomes really important in those deep and dark places in a contest prep where you're pushing and trying to get maximal fat loss. So you mentioned a few of your case examples, how things changed, after the first contest going into the second. And as the diet extended. So how is autoregulation important for a contest prep, and what are some ways that you've applied it?
I never want to say that it's something is absolute, you know what I mean? But I can tell you that autoregulation, or at least the autoregulation of a program, is something that it seems like I almost always end up utilizing in my bodybuilders, because there comes a certain point when you're not much good but to anything to look at. You are in a very fragile state, and you can't train to the same intensities that you were using at the beginning of your competition prep. And you have to come to grips with knowing, okay, that was 180 pound Brad that was moving those loads. This is 155 pound Brad. There's no way that I'm comparing two athletes there. So you have to kind of just know that, okay, in order to get the least drop in volume here, we want to try to maintain our reps and our sets as much as we can. Because if we try to maintain loads, reps and sets are going to fall off dramatically. And then therefore,
massive drop in volume.
Exactly, volume is going to drop dramatically. And that's when we really start getting those big muscle losses that you see in those really invasive preps. So with autoregulation, you can kind of say, okay, well, first of all, I want you to choose the load that feels appropriate for that rep target. If it's hypertrophy, maybe it's 10 or 12. If it's strength, maybe it's 5 or 7. But you choose the load, and then just you just have to kind of let the person know, okay, really, if you think about it, yes, volume is going to go down. It's just inherent with any drop of either intensity or reps and sets. But volume is going to fall off the least, I guess I should say. Plus, this was you before lifting those loads. This was you in the middle lifting those loads. Now here you are now using these same loads here, maybe in the middle. So you've actually progressed that way. Maybe before you were lifting 4 times your body weight is a tonnage over all your exercises. In the middle of prep, you're lifting 3 times. You're still lifting 3 times, but you're 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
There's progress.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Very important points for anyone entering a bodybuilding contest prep in terms of how to approach their training. Brad, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob.
It was an excellent presentation. Guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure you like it, and we'll speak to you all next time.